Hello everyone, welcome back to Fraud on the Telly. In today's video we return to everyone's favorite animated D&D campaign to go over all the foreshadowing in the Legend of Vox Machina. With a dungeon master like Matthew Mercer, you know there are going to be twists and turns throughout the story. But did you know just how much foreshadowing there is in Season 1 of Legend of Vox Machina? Let me tell you, it's a lot. So in today's video, we're going to go over all the instances of foreshadowing I could find in Season 1 of Legend of Vox Machina. As always, if you enjoy the video or learn something new, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. As well, I'm sure I'm going to miss some instances of foreshadowing, so please drop those in the comments down below. I shouldn't even have to say this, but obviously this video will contain spoilers for Legend of Vox Machina, as well as Critical Role Campaign 1. The first instance of foreshadowing we're going to talk about comes minutes into Episode 1 of Legend of Vox Machina. A nameless adventuring group has set out to defeat an unknown creature when they are quite violently killed and disposed of. We learn very little of the creature from these scenes, but we do see arcs of blue-type lightning hit the adventurers, so a keen-eyed fan could have connected the dots from the opening scene that the mysterious creature is in fact a blue dragon. There are several other instances of foreshadowing we take from Episode 1. For example, we get some foreshadowing of upcoming events as Uriel tells his council they must consult with the Briarwoods, as no one has heard from Whitestone in months. Already setting seeds for the final arc in Episode 1, I see. Throughout the show, the audience is also treated to a number of subtle Keyleth and Vax love teasers that ramp out throughout the season. The first coming in Episode 1 when Vax catches Keyleth's staff and they have this cute little awkward moment. Plenty of these moments throughout the season, the next coming in Episode 4 when the audience catches Vax staring at Keyleth as she druid crafts flowers. Episode 1 as well sets the seeds for Keyleth's personal story arc in Legend of Vox Machina, which I like to call the Keyleth fuck-up arc, where her struggle with self-belief and self-confidence causes her to believe she constantly messes every situation up, when in fact she constantly plays a vital role within Vox Machina. But in VM's first fight in the dragon, we get our first exposure to this as Keyleth uses a Call Lightning spell on the dragon, accidentally powering it up, but then she makes up for it minutes later by creating a dome of vines to protect the party. Skipping ahead to Episode 7 for my favorite moment of foreshadowing in the entire season. The party regroup after saving Archie from Sir Stonefall. After some heated conversation, Percy reveals the origins of his pepper box. After listening to this, Grog asks what the scribbles on the barrels are for. Percy explains these are the monsters he hunts, and begins to list them off. After counting the names, Scanlan says this is only 5, who's the 6th barrel for? Before Percy can answer, the group are interrupted by Keyleth. Later on in the series, we see the name the last barrel would take would be Cassandra Derolo, Percy's sister, after she betrayed them while under the control of Lord Briarwood. Back to Episode 2, when you know it opens with a little foreshadowing. Krieg has been ordered to rally his soldiers, and as they prepare for whatever beasts they may face, Krieg decides to give quite the little sussy speech to rally them. Looking back, this scene really does scream, "Hey audience, I'm the evil blue dragon." Just listen to some of the things he says. We don't need to know our enemy, just know ourselves. A storm's blowing through tonight, shortly followed by the arrival of the blue dragon, which uses lightning, by the way, aka a storm, and the mysterious vanishing of General Krieg, all a little sussy, dude. Krieg returns to the capital, informing them the creature is in fact a dragon. Learning this, Uriel speaks to Laura, referencing her past encounter with a large red dragon. Fans in the know instantly know they're referring to Thordak here, the great red dragon who was responsible for the death of Vex and Vax's mother, as well as future big bad evil guy of Campaign 1, who leads a group of ancient dragons known as the Chroma Conclave. Krieg again blows his cover to the keen fans when he asks Vox Machina how they possibly could have made it out alive. A legit question from him, seeing as he was the dragon who buried them under the pile of rubble to begin with. These evil dragons are only foreshadowed one other time, and later in this episode, upon entering the dragon's lair, Keyleth stumbles upon an odd rock containing several orb-like stones. These orbs open like eyes as a voice rings out, "Intruders." These rocks being the other members of the Chroma Conclave. But I guess we're going to have to wait until Season 2 comes out until we get more of this dragon goodness. Later on in Episode 2, Vax and Pike visit Gilmore's shop in order to learn more about dragons. While there, we encounter a plethora of Easter eggs, but one in particular is an interesting foreshadow to events later on in the season. Specifically, this Triceratops skull. The skull is a reference to the events in Episode 7, Scanbo, where Scanlan went on his solo mission in the Duke's mansion and transforms into the Triceratops. On to Episode 3, which starts off with 2 very subtle instances of foreshadowing. The first comes as Percy awakes from a nightmare, remembering the days the Briarwoods came to Castle Whitestone and killed his family. As Percy exits his room, the shot lingers on his bird-like gas mask, foreshadowing events later in the season and Percy's dark deal with the shadow demon Orthax to extract revenge on those who hurt him most. As later on in this episode, we see Percy don this mask, smoke collating around him as he tortures this poor carriage driver. Percy leaves the room after the nightmare to get some fresh air. He is stopped by Vex, who is worried about him. This brief interaction is a little foreshadowing and sets the seeds for a Percy-Vex romance. Later on in episode 3, Legend of Vox Machina treats the audience to the first of many door jokes as Vox Machina struggles to open a door to see Alora, a joke that's repeated throughout Season 1, as in Campaign 1, Vox Machina notoriously struggled with locked doors, causing the community to refer to doors as the big bad evil guy. Later on, Vox Machina are invited to a banquet at Uriel's castle, where they encounter the murderers of Percy's family, the Briarwoods. In episode 3, we see Silas use his vampiric powers to charm Sovereign Uriel and Vax. This is foreshadowing to events in the climax of our season, as Silas's charming power is an integral part to the final battle. In addition, during this episode, we're introduced to the biggest, baddest of all the bad guys out there, Vecna, the Whispered One. As Vax flips through Delilah's strange spellbook, he lands on a page with the words, "The Whispered One," scribbled down next to a drawing of a skull that has been blindfolded. This is one of the names for Vecna, a human who is ascended to godhood and overall is just a nasty, evil, necromantic guy, who happens to be the main driver of much of the conflict seen in Legend of Vox Machina and Critical Role Campaign 1. I think it's super rad. All the way in episode 3, we get a tiny breadcrumb to something that doesn't really pay off until much later in the series. Now that's good foreshadowing. On to episode 4, more foreshadowing into Vecna and the Briarwoods, as in a very brief moment, Scanlan shows the audience one of the pages of Delilah's book. This page reappears later on in the season, but already in episode 4, we can see the drawings of the ziggurat, which the Briarwoods plan to initiate a ritual in order to return Vecna to our plane of existence at, as well as these undead dog-like creatures that Delilah later summons to attack Vox Machina. We get more Percy lore drop in episode 4. In this drop, Percy goes out of his way to reference the mentor that betrayed his family, Professor Anders, foreshadowing Percy's brutal murder and hatred of his former teacher.
You're the face I saw when murder entered my heart. This is your doing, and I pulled the trigger.
In addition, Percy in these scenes sets up a bit of a bait and switch, as he stresses and fully believes he is the only member of his family that survived, which makes the switch all the better when later on in episode 6, Percy discovers his sister Cassandra still lives. Also, we see Percy making his rifle bad news in the scenes here, but they're subtle enough that many fans could have missed them, as we don't see the rifle reappear for 2 more episodes. As well, we see Keyleth, who for the first time uses the spell Sunbeam, a spell in which she first struggles with, but will come to be a pivotal spell and moment later on in the series when Vox Machina face off against the Briarwoods. Moving on, the party, after being attacked by Delilah's undead wolf-like creatures, are resting talking amongst each other. Scanlan pulls out a scroll he took from Brynside's lair, but is unable to make it work correctly. This is the polymorph scroll that he will later use in episode 7 to transform into the Triceratops in his solo mission, as we mentioned earlier in Gilmore's shop. After this, Percy is laying down, spinning the barrels of his pistol. Across the barrels, the audience can see the names etched, the first one we see being Sir Stonefell. This is pretty cool because Stonefell is the first name that Percy actually takes off the list, so it's fitting it's also the first name we see. Side tangent, I love the subtle setup of the horrifying sun tree scene that ends this episode. The Briarwoods have invited a group of commoners into the castle and tell them all they've been chosen for a special events. Viewers not in the know would have been surprised when later on in the episode, Vox Machina entering the city discover these commoners that we saw earlier hanging from the sun tree dressed to look like them. This scene gets even more crazy and foreshadowy with this bombshell that was dropped recently in Campaign 3, but if you want to know more about that, click the eye above because I don't want to spoil anything. The next bit of foreshadowing occurs in episode 6 when Percy and Vox Machina confront Keeper Yennon on the streets. Percy's image here is shadowy with just the glow of his eyes emanating out. This bears a very striking resemblance to some of these images of Percy here later on when he is controlled by Orthax. What makes me a little more certain that this is actually foreshadowing is Percy's line to Yennon afterwards. "I am what they made me," and what they made him is a stone-cold killer. Later, when with the Resistance, Scanlan lays out a plan where he will solo enter the mansion using the potions he found in Brynside's lair, which turns out is exactly what he does a few episodes later in episode 7. Fast forward to the end of episode 6, Percy has just killed Sir Stonefell when he turns aiming his gun at Vax. Later, Vax, furious with Percy, tells him if he ever turns the gun on any of the party again, he will kill him himself. Obviously, this is foreshadowing the climax of Legend of Vox Machina, where the party are forced to fight Percy, who is being influenced by the shadow demon Orthax. Turns out Vax was a big softie all along, as he and the rest of the party are unable to actually hurt Percy. And yeah, that's it for the foreshadowing in Legend of Vox Machina. I'm sure there's plenty of other instances of foreshadowing that I missed. A lot of them, though, just seemed kind of repetitive, just foreshadowing the same instances. So I figured that this would be more than good enough. Let me know, though, the other foreshadowing I missed in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Go ahead and click a video on screen now, like maybe our Laudna's backstory or revealed video, and I will see you in the next one. As always, guys, stay safe out there. Peace, love, adieu.